do the dishwasher, the roof, like
Sheesh.
anything like that. And so it wasn't really doing anything, right? Like as
Mm-hmm.
far as passive income. And after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I just realized that there's so many other alternative ways to make money. It doesn't have to be owning a rental. However, that is one way, but there's so many different ways. Like he's
What's going on, everybody? Hey, I am so excited to host another episode here talking about private money lending in real estate. I'm so grateful to have Audrey as our guest today. Audrey, thank you for taking time away from family business to spend time here and learn a little bit about, real estate and private money lending.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited. Hey, everyone, we talk about private money lending here, how to structure loans, how to protect yourself. This is for educational purposes, so just whatever we say, there are ways to help you educate a little bit more, but always use like a closing attorney title company when you're drafting your promissory note or any documentation. But again, without the disclaimer out of the way, Audrey, again, I'm so excited. I always start the conversation by curiosity is like, how did Audrey get into real estate? Was it like you were born with it? Were you like, oh my God, this is my dream. I'm going to have like a RV park owner. How did that journey begin for Audrey?
Oh, yeah. I think it kind of was born out of necessity. Honestly, I didn't grow up in real estate. I'm not an entrepreneur at heart, or at least I wasn't born that way. And so it just came out of necessity. I work in healthcare. I was working a lot of nights and weekends in the ER. I have 2 small kids, and it was just getting to the point where I was not seeing them very much. I was not getting to see my husband very much. It's like that constant chase, the rat, the rat chase or rat. What is that?
Yeah.
Rat race? Rat race. There we go.
Yeah. Rat race. Yeah.
Where you are constantly like, oh, we want more money for more freedom, so I better pick up more shifts. So I'd pick up more and more
Mm-mm.
shifts to get more money, but then it's like, well, then there's no freedom. I'm losing freedom actually. And it just got to a point where I was like, this isn't sustainable, especially with small kids. And I was starting to feel a lot of resentment towards my job and things like that. So something had to change. That was it. Like something had to change. And I was trying to look at other ways of creating some passive income. And I know I'm not unique in this, but I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And
Yeah.
once I read that, it just expands your mind in so many different ways. Once I read that, I knew that I had to start doing something outside of the box. Like I could not just work this W-2 and live off of someone else's expectations and schedule until I'm 65. I can't stomach it.
Yeah. Oh my God. I bet that resonates with so many of us, right? Because all of us, started from that, right? It's like, hey, I think all our parents told us, hey, guys, you guys need to go to college. You guys need to get a
Exactly.
degree. You guys need to like work for an amazing profession and you guys are going to be set. And,
Exactly.
it's funny. I'm also from the healthcare space. So, I feel where you're saying, it's like,
Mhm.
hey, we get paid well,
Right.
it's good pay, but to your point, right? It's like you have to put in that extra overtime, or it's
Mhm.
like you can't really, you know, depending on where you're at in healthcare, you may not have that flexibility, right? To be able to say, hey, I need to go pick up my kids, or I need to go
Mhm.
to watch their concert, right? Or whatever, or their sports game. So yeah, we don't have that flexibility. So I
Exactly.
completely hear where you're coming from, Audrey, and I'm pretty sure it resonates with so many of us. So you read Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Yeah,
which is an amazing book. Everybody should read it.
you should.
If you've read it once and you haven't read it, read it again. Because
Yeah.
every time you read a book like 2 or 3 times, you pick up always something new out of it. Um, you don't have to go buy another book. Just reread the books you have.
Yeah, yeah,
Trust
that's
me.
true.
So you read that book that changed your perspective. So right when you read that book, was it something that you were like, oh my God, I want to start owning real estate? Or was it like more of like, I know real estate, he gives great principles and how to start accumulating wealth. What did that like that turn the switch, right? That turned your curiosity into real estate. What were the steps though you took? Was it, hey, I'm going to own my first rental, or I'm going to go into wholesaling, or am I going to become an agent? Like, what was that for Audrey?
At the time that I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, we already had a long-term rental that we kind of just like fell into. It was our old primary residence, and so we just decided to
Nice.
rent it when we moved. So we had a long-term rental, but it was, if you want to call it cash flow, it wasn't really cash flowing, but
Mm,
it was like $200 a month, but that's not including like any of the maintenance that we had to do, the dishwasher, the roof, like
Sheesh.
anything like that. And so it wasn't really doing anything, right? Like as
Mhm.
far as passive income. And after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I just realized that there's so many other alternative ways to make money. It doesn't have to be owning a rental. However, that is one way, but there's so many different ways. Like he's talking about going to the tax lien auctions and all these things. Like there's just so many different ways, but you have to be creative. You have to think outside of the box and you have to be willing to take a risk. And I was like, say no more. I'm not very risk averse. I'm kind of crazy when it comes to risk. So I was like, say no more. I'll take a risk. And so that's kind of when I started deep diving into just what are all the other avenues, even just within real estate, that I can start to
Mm,
create passive income. So we sold the long-term rental. We're like, this is useless. Took the money the equity that we had in that property, and I thought I'll just take this money and just buy more long-term rentals. So then
mm.
I'll have more passive income. And then I realized I'll have to buy a lot of rentals. I have to buy a lot of rentals to get me the passive income that I need to even scale back on my W-2. I'm
Mm,
not even concerned about leaving completely, but just scaling back on my W-2
right.
is a lot of rentals. And so that's kind of where I found private money lending, and it made so much more sense as far as like an
Mm,
income type of thing. Now it's all depending on each person's goals, of course. If your goal is more of a long-term wealth, then private money lending may not be your number one go-to thing, because that's more of a now money. It's more active, like increasing your monthly cash flow. But for me, that's exactly what I needed. I needed more monthly income without more hours at work. So, and it solved
yeah.
my problem.
That is amazing. Yeah, you make a good point, right? Because it depends on where somebody's at in their journey, right? In their
Exactly.
investment journey or their growth. Because there are those people maybe that they have like a super high paying job, right? That they're okay with that profession and they enjoy, whatever it is that they do. And they just need maybe the tax benefits of owning long-term rentals.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, that definitely puts that person in a different situation. There are other people, it's like, you know what? No, I need some more cash flow because to your point, like having a property that's long-term rental and it's only cash flowing $200 if nothing else happens. Oh, and dealing with tenants
Right,
and
right. The late payment every month, just all of that. I was like, this is not what Rich Dad Poor Dad was talking about. This is
right.
not it. So it didn't take long for me to figure that out, and then it was off to the races.
That is pretty awesome. And even though that there are other strategies, we talked about long-term rental as one of the strategies that you could use a property, right? Nowadays, you got like the short-term rental market, like
Mhm.
Airbnbs but yeah, they may generate a little bit more cash flow, but then you're still dealing with the headaches of tenants, right?
Right.
And
Or
potential issues that
hospitality.
come up.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Why was the grass so wet? Or why was your rug this color? Or like, yeah, hospitality also is not my strong suit, as you can tell, being from healthcare. I'm not that good at hospitality. And so I'm good at making sure like you don't die. And so
Right.
other than that, like I'm not very hospitable in those ways, and so Airbnb I knew was not gonna be a super solid route for me either. Plus, it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of time
Absolutely.
and a lot of energy to run and manage an Airbnb, and so I found I can get pretty similar returns without having to manage an Airbnb, and that's through private money lending. So once I found out about it, it was a pretty easy path forward.
That is awesome. So let's jump into private money lending, right? You found that, hey, this is a great way to make now money and be
Mhm.
able to put my capital to work and be able to, generate higher cash flow than a long-term rental. So how was that? Like, did you jump right into a deal, or was it more like, hey, let's ask a whole bunch of questions. How was that first deal to you, Audrey, that you were like, hey, this deal makes sense? Did you vet like 20 deals before you got into one? Tell us a little bit about that journey there.
Yeah, I didn't jump right in. I definitely tried to do as much learning and educating of myself as possible. I watched a lot of Zooms. I went to office hours with people that I knew were reputable. I did my safety training. Like I tried to do as much education as I could, but I also was very eager. And once again, like risk is something that I'm okay with. I feel okay about, much to my husband's dismay. And so I think I took about, let's see, 1, 2, like maybe 2 months, if right around 2 months from when I learned about probably private money lending until when I did
Hmm.
my first deal, maybe a little less than that actually. Um, but with that being said, that first deal that I did, my money's still in that deal. I still get my monthly payments. However, the loan was due May 1st and it is now August 26th.
Hmm.
And the house is not under like it's listed on the market. And until it
Hmm.
sells, I'm probably not going to see my funds back. And so I caution people that as much as I am eager, and I know other people are eager, um, just there's risks, of course. There's risks
Right.
associated with lending. And like my borrower has not ghosted me, nothing like that. Thank goodness. I've heard horror stories in that regard. So it's everything's okay, but I would like my funds back. I would like that back so that I
Absolutely.
could start going into new deals and new opportunities that I think that I found that are, more lucrative. Um, so yeah, I say that with caution. Like I jumped in, I took action, I did all the things and it's worked out okay for me, but I do, caution people to jump in too quickly without maybe having somebody holding your hand that is
Yeah.
already in the lending space. I think if I went back, that's maybe what I would do, do a deal with someone that's already in the space so that I can learn through them and have a little bit less risk all on myself. Um, but yeah, it's
Yep.
risky. You live and you learn. I'm still getting my monthly payment, so it's not like a bad deal, but I would change a few things if I went back.
Yeah. I love that, right? Because you mentioned risk, right? And I know uh, each person, they're going to, again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, each person's at their own state, right? They could potentially be like, hey, I got $20,000. I can lend this. If
Mhm.
nothing happened, if I lose it, it's okay. It's
Yeah,
just like a little stash of money that I had there. But if I can make it grow, oh man, that's going to be amazing. There are other people that $20,000 is big money for them, right? So
exactly, yeah.
understanding what type of deal you're getting into. Audrey shared with us that the type of deal she got into was a fix and flip,
Yeah,
correct?
like a wholesale. He bought it off market, painted it, and listed it on market. So it was supposed to be a very simple, straightforward, and quick type of
Hmm.
thing. And it's been now coming up on 9 months, I think.
Yeah.
So,
The one thing I did want to take away from your type of loan, the way you structured it though, is that you are getting monthly payments.
mhm.
And was that intentional that you set that up from the beginning, or was that after the loan matured that you started implementing that?
No, that's how he had offered the deal in the first place, was with monthly payments. And so, not knowing anybody, I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Like that, I would rather have monthly payments, especially being new. And so I was perfectly fine with that. And looking back, I'm glad I did that just because it
Yes.
ended up being such a long loan. I think if it was shorter, like a, 4 or 6 month deal, I would have considered no monthly payments. But now that I know how it turned out, I'm glad I got them.
Yeah, that's so good, right? Because a lot of people get into some of these deals and they wait for that flat fee at the back end. But to your point, right, if it takes long,
Hmm.
then there's a higher risk that potentially that investor could ghost you, and I guess you found somebody that's holding the fort, right? I always say, that there's these three pillars: the borrower, right, the deal, and the market. You have to like
Yeah.
be able to use those three to gauge you so that borrower can hold everything, if in the event the market's not there, or luckily maybe he hopefully he still makes money off of the deal, but at the end it comes back to a borrower in that type of situation.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
glad they're paying you that monthly interest. That's a huge win. So for anybody that's looking at doing like potential fix and flip loan, or like a hotel where they, I think hotel is where the existing mortgage stays in place, or did they acquire it? fully with
He just
cash?
bought it through a wholesaler, and I think he got a hard money loan for it.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. So there's, so that means Audrey's in second position, right? So there is a little bit more risk there, but
Yep.
as long as you structure it, those monthly payments are amazing, guys. And it's a good way to structure it. So if you have like a fix and flip or an investor coming and saying, "Hey, Edgar, I need a loan for $30,000. We'll pay you at the back end in 4 months." I would consider restructuring potentially. Not
Yeah,
saying it can't
potentially,
happen.
potentially. Sometimes that does, if you ask for monthly payments, it does put more pressure on the fix and flipper because where are they going to get monthly payments? They're still fixing the house. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so if they have to then also come up with monthly payments, that can then drain funds from the project that they could have otherwise put towards the project to get the project done either correctly or more quickly. And instead they're having to pay you. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it's not, in my opinion, I would say it's not always better to demand a monthly payment. Um, but it can give you a little bit more peace of mind as you're seeing the money come in every month. So it really is still dependent. But yeah, the borrower is important. The deal is important. There's always risk, but there's risk also in just owning your own
Absolutely.
property and just being investing in your own properties. You buy your own long-term rental and then you end up getting a roof leak and you have to pay for that, and then
Right.
the market shifts, and so you've just lost equity and you have no idea when you're going to get your money out of that, and you can't blame anybody other than, you can't blame a borrower, you can't blame
Yeah.
anybody. So there's always risk, and it just kind of depends on where you're at with your risk level and what type of money you're looking for and what your goals are, honestly.
Yeah. No, you make a good point, right? It's like not just because you're getting that monthly interest, that might be good for you as a lender,
Right.
but from the borrower's perspective, that could potentially affect how they could easily turn that property in and out. So definitely understanding the deal, right? Making sure that your borrower does have capital though, right? Because if he's only
Yeah.
using your capital, he could potentially be over leveraging himself.
Yes.
So that
Yep.
that could potentially put you in a bad spot. So doing your due diligence on the borrower is so huge. Audrey, you did mention if I were to go back, I would do something different.
Yeah.
What would that one thing be, or maybe two things that you could share with us? Be like, hey, I got into this deal, it looked good, but if you were to go back, you said I could potentially do this different. What would that look like?
Like I said, I think I would probably go through a lending deal with somebody who's already in the space or is very knowledgeable about lending, and go through a deal with them, kind of somebody holding my hand. Other than that, I think now looking back and knowing what I know, I think I would probably lend to a larger entity
Mm,
so that there's more references and people that have worked with this entity, and that you're backed by more than just a one-man show.
mm,
Um, that's kind of what I do now. I raise capital and I also lend to a real estate firm. And so it's a whole entity, it's a whole firm, a real estate firm owning millions and millions of dollars of real estate. And so I know after several months working with them that whether the property performs or whatever the value add goes through or the refinance goes through or whatever happens on the property that you're secured on, you're getting paid out no matter what because you're backed by the whole firm. And
mm,
so even with that, there's a whole team supporting that portfolio. There's somebody supporting every aspect of the firm and the real estate. And so there's just so many more people handling so many different aspects of the company that things can be taken care of a lot more quickly, a lot more thoroughly. That's their one section is property management, and that's what they do. And so it's just you have a little more security. Actually, you have a lot more security, but in a situation like that versus a one-man show where, like I said, if he doesn't sell the house, he doesn't have the funds to pay me back. So
right.
he sells the house or what, I don't know. He tries to refinance it and he's not going to be able to refinance at the amount of debt he has on the property. So that's the risk. Is like now
Mm.
he can't sell the house and so my money's trapped.
Yeah, that's, you mentioned how you could work with bigger entities. Tell us a little bit more about that model. How are those type of loans structured, right? Because usually, like typically, right, when you're working with a fix and flipper or a small fix and flipper in the area, maybe not small, medium, maybe, usually your capital is tied to that asset via like a first position lien or second position
Right.
lien, right, directly to that asset. But share a little bit more. How do you structure a loan when you're working with a firm? Is it similar structure model, or is it more of a personal guarantee on that firm?
It's similar. You still have a promissory note, you still have a deed of trust, first or second lien position. So it's all of that is very similar, but and it's not even anything official. There's not an official written guarantee by the firm or personal guarantee by the firm. I mean, there people request them, and we are happy to give a personal
Mhm.
guarantee depending on the deal. But ultimately, it's structured pretty similar. It's just in the fact that we pay people out when their loan is due, regardless of how, because we have the access to the funds and we can, and we want to make it a
Mhm.
good, a good relationship and a good experience for them so that we can continue working together. And so even if, and we honestly don't do a lot of selling, we're a buy and hold real estate firm, but even if the refinance or the value add or whatever's happening at the moment with the property that you're secured on, even if that's not going as it was planned or scheduled, we still have the funds, because we're such a large entity. We still have the funds to pay you out on time with your interest, to then get you out, make you happy, get you what you need, and then the chances that you'll want to lend again are pretty high because it was a good experience for you. And so that's more worth it to us than waiting for the property to perform the way we expected it to, which we all know in real
Mm.
estate, it's hit or
Right.
miss.
Right.
So, if we have the ability to pay that person out, regardless of that property, then we do it, because that, like I said, that just increases their relationship with us, it increases their experience, and then hopefully we can continue working together moving forward.
Yeah, so that is amazing, y'all. That what Audrey just mentioned and how that loan is structured is so important, right? Because it's not. I've seen deals come across where they say, "Hey, loan with us. It is a big firm, but the only guarantee you have is on that company." And it's like, yeah, but what if something happens to your organization, right? Like, how
Yeah.
is the money backed up? So the fact that your firm still puts that private money lender in first position under that property, that's a huge security there. So
Yeah, and
I love
sometimes it
I
is
love the way
second
that's
position
structured.
depending on how, the amount of funds. Sometimes it's first, sometimes it's second. But either way, you have your security on a physical asset in addition to the entire firm. Yeah.
That is awesome. So you did your first private money lending. Now you're working with this firm that's
Yep.
doing a whole bunch of deals. Are these deals nationwide, or is it specific to a certain market?
It is nationwide. We do invest nationwide. I can't say that we lean, significantly heavier in one market than the others. We really do nationwide. As long as the deal makes sense and it's in a growing market, then we take advantage.
That is awesome. And you said
Yeah.
the firm is primarily a buy and hold.
Yes, we are doing a bit of development right now, a couple different development projects. We have single family, multifamily, some value add. I think we are about to sell a few properties, but that's rare. Like, since I've worked with them, that's the first time I've heard of them selling, honestly. So it doesn't happen super often. Mostly just buy and hold development. And then our CEO is actually starting a sporting agency to help young athletes gain financial integrity, financial knowledge, and help them make smart investments, so that these young kids, they're coming into millions and millions and millions of dollars at like 18, have no idea what to do with that money. And so the sporting agency is aimed to help these young athletes invest smart. And if they do get hurt or their career ends, too soon, that they're not going bankrupt because they've blown all their money on, all the
Right,
things.
right. Yeah. Oh, that is so awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially
So
right
it's kind
now
of
with
fun.
all this stuff that has changed within like college sports, right? Like now college football players can make a whole lot of money, right? Whereas
Exactly.
before, a few years ago, that wasn't happening. So being able to bring that financial literacy to them and have like a financial program that can help them, that is amazing. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's been exciting to be a part of it, just because it's fun to talk to other lenders and investors and have that overall like purpose and passion behind what we're doing. Like, we're not just doing this because we all want to be rich, you know what I mean? Like, that's not the
Right.
goal. The real estate and the money associated with real estate is ultimately just the vehicle that is getting us to the bigger picture, the more meaningful, more bigger picture, which is the sporting agency and helping young athletes and making an impact on that side. But we're just using real estate and the funds from it as a vehicle
As a
to
vehicle.
make
Yeah.
to make the main impact. So it's nice. It's nice to have that bigger picture.
God, that is so cool. Yeah. And I know, we both come from the Pace Morby community where he talks
Mm-hmm.
about Mount Everest and that higher purpose, right, of being part of real estate. And you just mentioned that so nicely, right? And how,
Mm-hmm.
yes, we all want to make money, but at the same time, what type of purpose, what type of impact we want to make in our community or maybe even nationwide, right? Where we can help so many other people by what the vehicle we use, which is real estate. So pretty
Exactly.
awesome. Yeah, I'd be cheering for y'all. Hopefully, you guys change so many college people's lives. My oldest is 16. He's already starting to look at college and stuff. And it's like, oh
Oh, it's
man.
scary. It's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah. I'm like,
Them leaving
man,
the
well,
house is scary, but also like the amount that college costs is
yeah.
that's terrifying in itself.
So I told him, I was like, become an entrepreneur, come into real estate. My
Yeah,
wife's like, no, he's going
exactly.
to college.
Yeah, I see both
Yeah.
sides, but the price tag on education these days is terrifying.
Yeah, it is. It is
Mhm.
for sure. I'm like, you got to be super smart, my friend. Make sure you get grants, scholarships, whatever you
Yep, all
can.
the things. That's right.
Audrey, I value your time and you shared some amazing tips, as far as how to protect some of the capital from your early initial journey in the lending space. What are some other things, when you're vetting a borrower? I know right now, you're working with a firm, right? But for any private money lender, right, that wants to deploy capital into a deal, what are some of the things you would suggest for them, right, to do as far as vetting the borrower, vetting the deal, right? Like any tips you could give around that?
Tips for vetting a borrower in a deal. I in my opinion, I think that you can vet a borrower and you can vet a deal as much as you want. And ultimately, like some things just aren't going to work out. Sometimes they just may not work out. And even if the borrower checks all the things, he still could either fail, inadvertently, but still fail,
Mhm.
or he could still be someone that he's said he wasn't. You know what I mean? Like you're
Mm,
gonna potentially run into a bad apple. So in my opinion, I would vet a deal and a borrower as much as you possibly can. Underwrite the deal, make sure, especially if it's your first one, you're loaning at a very low loan to value. And then once you find a good one, like don't try to be the person that's lending to trying to find the best deal and jumping from borrower to borrower to borrower because
mm,
this one has higher returns or this. Once you find one that you trust and that you guys have been, worked together and you feel like you know them very well, I would just stick with that person and maybe one other person, but like really try to narrow it down to one or two people and just stick there because like that personally, when I was raising funds or looking to start raising funds for somebody, I did not feel comfortable doing it for several different people because at some point,
mm,
like I said, you're gonna run up against a bad apple. There's no way to avoid that.
right.
No matter how they can tell you all the sweet nothings that you want to hear, and you'll be convinced, but it's gonna happen at some point. And so find one or two good ones and just like stick with it.
Mhm. That is
That's what
so
I've done,
good.
and it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned being able to find those solid borrowers that are, that have a track record already. And if you're able to do business with two of them, yeah, you're gonna be able to scale quicker, right? You're gonna be able to turn money quicker, instead of hopping from one borrower to another because this other
Right.
borrower is giving like 15% flat or whatever, right? The
Right.
returns they're asking.
Exactly. And then you come to find out that 40 other people also thought those were really good returns. And now you guys are all stuck in this big mess together. And I say this not from personal experience, but I've heard about it. And so find a really, really good one, meet him, meet the borrower himself, all those things. And then once you've established a good relationship, just kind of stick with it. Don't get
Awesome.
shine. Well, I guess this is a certain type of
It
shiny
still be,
object
yeah.
syndrome, but yeah, don't jump to the next coolest borrower that has the best deals, because at some point one of them is going to go bad.
Yeah, everybody's coming out with their own strategies as far as, oh, we got this amazing co-living property, come and
Yes.
invest with us. And
Yes. I know. I know. Just stick with who you know. Try to feel out. One tip that I learned from Rhea Campbell actually was she doesn't do a ton of due diligence on her borrowers. She obviously underwrites the deal very well, but the borrower themselves, she's not like doing credit checks and background checks and all this stuff. She just does a lot of her decisions on who she's going to lend to based off of their emotional intelligence. She just has a conversation with them and gets to know them and figures out, just with her own intuition, what is their emotional intelligence? Are they do they have integrity? Do they lead with integrity? These types of things. And that's ultimately how she kind of decides who she's going to lend to. And I was like, that's mind blowing to me, because that's exactly how I would love to operate. Is I just want to know who you are and can I trust you if things hit the fan? And so hearing her say that I felt the permission to do the same. So I've never ran a credit check. I've never ran a background check. I've never done any of that stuff. You just kind of need to feel out the person and who they are. So I like that. And I've kind of ran with that.
Yeah, absolutely. During the conversation you're having, the questions you're asking are so important, right? Because as an investor, there's always risk, but how do you mitigate that risk to protect the lenders, right? And having somebody that can answer that question is a huge, right? It's a huge win. And because if they haven't encountered a problem before and have not been able to figure it out, or have been able to give you a clear answer on how they fixed it, that may be not the right borrower to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. They need to go through some stuff first. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you shared how to, it's a great tip on how to better borrow. So PMLs, if you guys are considering lending, definitely, there are people, right, that definitely want to do a background check. But if you don't have that type of personality that can read people and can ask good questions to be able to understand somebody's business, then maybe it is the other route, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna have to run a background check. What's your credit score, right, and all that other stuff. But there's no right or wrong way of doing it. You just have to understand that it is a business, and you want to make sure you set your own standard operating procedures, whatever those are.
Right.
Because you want to keep your capital safe, or the other people's capital safe. That private money lending is a great way to make money, but at the same time, it's a vehicle that if you don't set those boundaries correctly, you could easily go down a ditch.
That's right. You just straight right off that road.
And then when it comes to deals, the last tip here for the team here, when it comes to deals, you mentioned private first position, second position, that your firm does second position and first position. You mentioned also loan to value, right, earlier in the conversation. What would you say when it comes to the deal? Like, what's more important? Is it the position? Is it the loan to value, or both? Or, like, from your experience, what you've seen, how would somebody like gauge a deal, like just right off the bat, like a napkin underwriting type of thing?
I think that it can be both. If you're gonna lend at a little bit higher loan to value, then I would be in first position. If you're going to do a lower loan to value, then I think second position is fine, because you're in second position, but there's only so much debt on the property. So the chance that you're going to get your funds back out is pretty high. So I think either one can be important depending on which position you want to be in and how much the borrower is looking to leverage the property. So I think either one, depending on where you're at and what the deal looks like. I think another aspect of it ultimately is once again, who is the borrower? If they've done a million of these fix and flips or whatever you're lending on, then I would probably, me personally, my risk tolerance, I would be willing to lend at a little bit higher loan to value.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't like lending on flips at all, because of my first experience that we just talked about. So I don't like the potential. There's so many different points in a fix and flip that it can go wrong.
Right.
So the market can shift, the contractor can walk off, the cabinets can be on back order, there could be a flood because somebody nicked the pipe or whatever. And then you get the whole thing done, and then you list it. Oh, for some reason it's not selling. we got under contract and the day before closing the buyer backed out. Like there's just so many places along the line that it can go wrong. So I personally, I don't lend on fix and flips anymore. They're not my favorite asset class. I also don't think that this market right now is like the greatest market for
Right.
fix and flips. And so I personally just don't lend on them. I like lending on land flipping. That's something somewhat new that I found out about. And it's like
Yes.
very few points of failure in there. You're not doing much to the land. You're just buying a big chunk and splitting it into smaller chunks. So there's not a lot of room for things to go wrong. And then there's a lot of margin. Um, so I like stuff like that where it's a little bit more straightforward and fewer points of potential failure, personally.
Yeah, maybe we could do episode 2.
Land
Land
flipping. I have
lending,
a
land
person that
flipping,
I
land
can bring on
lending.
here and we could have a great episode.
That would be awesome. Yeah, because to
Yeah.
your point, there is a huge opportunity, right? I know we've talked about, fix and flips and buy and holds, but when it comes to lending, the doors open up to so many other
Yes.
opportunities, right?
Yep.
From RV parks, mobile home parks, multifamily side, and it's all safe. And you don't have to, there are certain classes, and depending on where you're at, you have to be an accredited investor, right? You have to
Mhm.
follow SEC rules, right, to be able to advertise some of the opportunities that are being presented to investors. But yeah, once you start seeing the lending space, yeah, so many other opportunities open.
Yeah.
Um, Audrey, I'm so grateful you took the time out of your day, from your family and business to be here with me again and chat about lending and your experience and how you've been able to make great things happen right now. Where can people connect with you, Audrey, if they want to know more, if they want to say, hey, I'm going to go fund some deals with Audrey, where can they connect?
The main place would be Instagram, probably. It's at Audrey Blotz with a Y. So Audrey Blotz with a Y. And then Facebook, Audrey Blotz. You can reach out to me there. Those are the two main places. I have a TikTok, but I don't check it.
Yeah.
So those would be the two best places.
Awesome, Audrey. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely look forward to continue to network and connect each other and see how we can collaborate down the road. But
Wonderful. Thank you
for
so much.
now, hey, follow Audrey on Instagram and catch y'all in the next one. Peace out, people. Thank you.